The night air was cool in a small Denver suburb, where Daniel locked up his modest garage after a long day of work. The glow of the streetlights reflected on his grease-stained hands, a daily reminder of the life he carried on his shoulders. Being a single father meant every hour mattered, every job was essential, yet somehow there never seemed to be enough to go around. As he stepped toward his truck, a faint sound caught his attention, the sputtering of a car in distress not too far away. Following the noise, Daniel saw a young woman standing anxiously beside her car on the side of the road. Steam poured from under the hood, clouding the cold night air. She looked lost, glancing at her phone, only to find it nearly dead. Her name was Emily, a 28-year-old schoolteacher who had spent the day with restless students and was eager to get home. Now stranded in the dark, she felt panic rising until she saw Daniel approaching, wiping his hands on an old rag with a calm, collected stride. "Need some help?" Daniel asked, his voice low but steady. Emily hesitated at first, unsure of trusting a stranger at night. Yet something in his weary but gentle eyes told her he was safe. She nodded, stepping aside as Daniel leaned over the open hood. Within minutes, his skilled hands traced the problem, a worn-out belt that had given way. He pulled a spare from his truck, patching it together enough to get her home. Watching him work, Emily was struck by his quiet focus, the way he moved, with practiced care. When Daniel stepped back, the car rumbled back to life with a rough but steady hum. Relief washed over Emily's face as she thanked him. "How much do I owe you?" she asked quickly, already digging through her purse. Daniel shook his head, standing tall under the streetlight. "I don't need money," he replied with quiet honesty. "I'll take a sandwich. My boy at home hasn't eaten yet." His words stunned her. She had expected him to name a price, not reveal the weight of his own struggles. For a moment, Emily couldn't find her words. No mechanic had ever refused her money before, and certainly not in exchange for something so simple, so human. She promised to return and drove away slowly, her mind replaying his request. At home, Daniel arrived to find his 10-year-old son, Ben, waiting patiently with a worn-out schoolbook in his hands. Daniel ruffled his hair, promising that food would be on the table soon, even though he wasn't sure how. His son's trust in him was unshaken, despite the hardships they faced daily. An hour later, there was a knock at the door. Emily stood there, holding a bag with 2 sandwiches, fresh fruit, and even a thermos of warm soup. Daniel accepted it humbly, his eyes softening with gratitude. That night, father and son shared the meal, savoring every bite as if it were a feast. Ben grinned through mouthfuls of bread, asking about the kind lady who had brought them food. Daniel simply smiled and said, "Someone who needed help, and gave us more than we expected." Neither of them realized yet how this small act of kindness would ripple into something far greater than they could imagine. The next morning, Daniel woke earlier than usual, the memory of Emily's kindness lingering in his mind. He brewed weak coffee and packed Ben's school bag with the little they had left. Just as they were about to leave, there was another knock at the door. Standing there was Emily again, dressed for work, but holding a bag of groceries. Daniel looked stunned, unsure how to respond. She smiled gently and said, "Consider this a thank you for last night." Ben's eyes lit up at the sight of fresh food, but Daniel felt conflicted about accepting so much generosity. Emily noticed his hesitation and added softly, "You gave me safety when I was stranded. This is nothing compared to that." Her sincerity broke through Daniel's pride, and he finally nodded, thanking her. After dropping Ben at school, he returned to the garage, determined to work harder. But throughout the day, his mind kept returning to Emily's gesture. Few people had ever looked beyond his grease-stained clothes or his humble status. For once, someone had seen him not as just a mechanic, but as a man doing his best. That evening, Emily stopped by again. This time, she asked Daniel to look at her car properly and insisted on paying for the repairs. He reluctantly agreed, focusing on the job while she waited with Ben, who eagerly showed her his school drawings. Watching them together stirred something in Daniel. Emily's laughter filled the garage, softening its rough edges. For years, he had kept his world small, just work and his son. Now here was someone who seemed to fit into it naturally, without judgment or pity, but with warmth and respect. As the days passed, Emily visited more often, sometimes with her car, sometimes simply to check on them. Ben grew fond of her quickly, asking if she could stay for dinner or help with homework. Daniel, cautious but hopeful, found himself opening up about his struggles, how he had lost his wife, how every dollar was stretched to keep food on the table. Emily listened without interruption, her eyes filled with quiet compassion. In her heart, she knew this man's strength went far beyond fixing cars. It was in the way he carried his burdens with dignity. One Friday evening, Emily invited Daniel and Ben to her home for dinner. The small apartment was cozy, filled with books and warmth, a stark contrast to Daniel's bare living space. Over the meal, laughter replaced the silence that usually hung over his evenings. For the first time in years, Daniel felt a sense of belonging, as though life was offering him something more than just survival. Ben, grinning ear to ear, whispered later, "Dad, she's nice. You smile more when she's around." Daniel brushed it off, but deep down, he knew his son was right. The next week, Emily surprised Daniel again, but this time, not with food or kindness alone. She revealed she had spoken to a local community program about his skills. They were offering him a chance to run a small, fully equipped workshop under their support. Daniel was speechless, his hands trembling as he realized this was more than charity. It was an opportunity to rebuild his life. Standing beside him, Emily and Ben both smiled with pride. That night, Daniel finally understood. Fixing her car for a sandwich had set in motion something greater. It wasn't luck, it was kindness returning to him tenfold, shaping a future he never thought possible.